140, we're going to sing the 3 verses. Let's stand as we sing number 140, He Lives. Catch breath real quick, and then turn to number 113, number 113, Rock of Ages, number 113, and we'll sing those 3 verses of Rock of Ages. announcements and scripture.
All right, good morning, Faith Baptist Church. Visitors this morning, we do have coming up this afternoon at 1:30. Today is the 26th, so today we will be at the nursing home. We're at Demery Crossing, and if you'd like to participate in that, you can talk to any number of people. The pastor, you can talk to myself, you can talk to Brother Jared, Brother Tim. Brother Tim will be preaching this afternoon, so if you want to come and be a blessing and receive a blessing, I would encourage you to do that. We'll be there at 1:30. If you want to stay for lunch, we'll be having lunch here at the church. That will be provided for you. And come and be a blessing to the seniors over at the Demery Nursing Home. Be a blessing to you. Then on Tuesday, the 4th, will be a ladies' Bible study at 10:30, followed by next Saturday, it's Saturday after that, it'll be the Fall Festival. That'll be from 12 to 2, so be thinking about, especially the youth, but anyone else who would like to bring a biblical costume of some sort. And of course, we wanted to represent the Bible, and so be ready to defend your choice with chapter and verse. And there will be a competition, so for the youth, there'll be some prizes for the best. And by best, I think we mean the most creative biblical costume. We'll be doing that from 12 to 2 on that Saturday the 8th. And then Thursday the 20th will be the next men's devotion at 7. So be here for that, men of the church. And that will be the final men's devotion for 2025. So we'll be looking forward to that. And then finally, last but certainly not least, the Thanksgiving service will be Tuesday the 25th. So that will be our midweek service. There is a sign-up sheet in the hallway out here for that, for food, if you'd like to bring soup. There'll be a soup and sandwich again this year. So looking forward to that. I see the soups already starting to pile up on the sign-up sheet. Looking forward to that. And that's our announcements this morning. Brother Sam will be coming and reading our psalm this morning.
It's Psalm 92, 12 through 15. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be fat and flourishing. To show that the Lord is upright, he is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him.
All right. Thank you for that. I think the verse that caught and stood out to me there was, they shall bring forth fruit in old age. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. Lord, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Lord, we just thank you for your mercy, your grace. And Lord, we ask that you be present here with us today. We thank you for the good health, and the opportunity and the ability to be here, that we can lift up praise to you, that we can lift up just our voices to give you honor and glory. Lord, we thank you for your Son. We thank you for the free gift that you give us. Lord, that love that you gave on the cross, and Lord, that punishment and the pain that you took for us. Lord, we thank you for all who have come today. Lord, I pray a special blessing for each one who's come. I pray that you would bless just the church, that you would grow the church, that you would be here with us. And Lord, convict us where we need it. Lord, lead us and guide us and help us to make decisions, whatever those things are that we need to make. Lord, help us to set aside those things that would be distracting us this morning, those things that would be setting us, the weights and the things that would give us anxieties or worries, Lord. I pray that you would remove those, that we can focus on your word. We thank you once again in Jesus' name. Amen.
Number 117 in the hymnal, number 117. If you remain seated for this, we're going to sing the first verse. We're going to sing all the verses, but then we'll sing the first verse, and then we'll have a reading time when we come back to the second. Number 117, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. We're going to sing a cappella. And if you know a part, then sing your part. And the last verse, number 4.
Amen. A lot of the points in that song, or a lot of the phrases there stood out to me, and they're aligned with the man we're considering in our sermon this morning in the book of Genesis, a man who certainly suffered many wrongs, but did his best to follow the Lord, and the Lord showed just how well he could take care of him. We'll be in the book of Genesis, chapter number 39 this morning. This past week, I was blessed to have a small part in the youth conference at Indiana Baptist College, as were many of our students. Many of them sang and played a hand in the services there. And I know oftentimes when we speak of youth or of teenagers specifically, it's to focus on immaturity or foolishness or sin in young people. Well, I am grateful that there are still many young people in our country and in our churches that do take serving the Lord seriously and take following the Lord seriously and want to know His Word and know His will and do everything they can to live for Him. And it is such a young man that we'll look at today. This is Joseph, a very well-known figure of the Old Testament, and specifically the book of Genesis. He is a young man that was not a preacher, was not a pastor in the normal sense, I guess we could say prophet. The Lord did use him to prophesy or tell the future by interpretation of dreams, but was a man that God used in a very powerful way. And when we think about Joseph, we normally think about, he was the one who was used to interpret dreams. He himself had a prophetic dream, and that's the one he shared with his brothers, and they weren't too happy about that. And he had another one that was very similar, and they didn't like it either. Then, he went on to interpret the dreams of the butler and the baker, and eventually Pharaoh himself, and the Lord used him in a very mighty way to save not just Egypt and his own family, but many people that came to Egypt in the time of that terrible, terrible drought. Joseph is a man that was undoubtedly used in many great ways. And he's also a man, though, that suffered very unjustly. Still to this day, if I ask Joab, what do you know about Joseph? He says his brothers threw him in a big hole. That is always his answer. His brothers threw him in a big hole. And then after that, as you think, we're going to see the time of his life today where he's in Potiphar's house. And what happened when he did right? He got thrown in another big hole. He got thrown in the dungeon there in Egypt. And eventually we know how the Lord worked in his life. But he tried to serve God. He was used in many ways. But a lot of times he just seemed to lose out whenever something would happen. And it would end up being imprisoned or taken captive. And when you think about all the great things that Joseph did, and I trust that's normally what comes to your mind first. Normally when I hear Joseph, I think the man God used to interpret dreams, the man God used to save his family and save the house of Israel and all those good things. But what you might not often think about right away is that if Joseph had not had the right response to temptation at a crucial point in his life, he likely would have never become the man that we remember him as today. I think Joseph is a wonderful example of the application of Proverbs chapter 5. Now, Proverbs 5 is not our text, but is the warnings, the fatherly advice, warning against the strange woman. And the application of this could be taken to temptation or sin in general. But it's showing what you need to do to avoid sin's attempts to ensnare you and entrap you. And Joseph just exemplified verse 8 of Proverbs 5, which says this: "Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house." Simply put, that means if there is something that is going to try and tempt you, something that will try and ensnare you to disobey the Lord, ensnare you to wickedness, just stay away from it. Just stay away from it as best you can. And here in this account of Joseph's life, and we're going to be in verses 7 through 15 of Genesis 39, we see a record of how Joseph handled a very persistent temptation, and from his actions, I believe we see a great plan for us when we are faced with temptations ourselves. So beginning in verse 7 of Genesis 39, the scriptures say, "And it came to pass after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. And she said, Lie with me. But he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men in the house, or of the house there within. Verse 12 says this, and she caught him by the garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. Our first point this morning is the reality of temptation. We do have 4 points, so don't get too excited on point 3 today. We have 4 today. The first is the reality of temptation. Joseph was certainly in a temptation-rich environment, and I mean in ways other than Potiphar's wife. He was very far from home. He was far from everyone who knew him, far from the father who had taught him morality and taught him about God. And I think Joseph had every reason to suspect he would never again see his father or see his family. And where he is now, there is likely no one around that Joseph would be accountable to or accountable with. No one that would encourage him to follow the true God. And I doubt there was even anyone who really cared whether Joseph followed God or not. It's not like Joseph was in a secular work environment and then going home to a Christian family. Joseph wasn't in a very carnal situation during the day and then went to a good church on Sundays and Wednesdays. There was no one at this point in Joseph's physical life, no one apart from the Lord, that Joseph would even expect cared at all about his relationship with God. No one that cared at all whether he gave in every sin or stayed true and abstained from sin. And he wasn't just in this situation because Joseph had done some foolish things. There's a lot of people that get in extremely tempting situations because they've made some really dumb decisions. There's sometimes I don't think you should drink. I think as a Christian you should abstain from alcohol all the way. And I think a good help for that is just don't go to the bar. You can't have somebody who goes, "Oh, Pastor, it was just so tempting." Well, where were you? Oh, I was at the bar. Really? Were you kidnapped? Did someone drag you there? It's like, oh no, I just went in. Well, okay, there's a good chance if you go somewhere that you know there's a struggling temptation, something's going to be there. You made the decision to be there. That was a dumb decision. Can we agree on that? Like, yeah, okay. Joseph didn't say, I want to go to Egypt. He didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, Dad, this has been great, but I hear there's some great times to be had in Egypt. Here, there's some really good things I would like to indulge in down in Egypt. No, his brothers threw him in a big hole and then they sold him as a slave, and he ended up somewhere. He had no say in the matter. He did not decide, I want to be there. He didn't say, I think it'd be good to be a slave. He didn't say, this Potiphar guy seems nice. I hope he hires me. Everything from the time he was thrown into the pit until now, Joseph has had no say whatsoever in his circumstance. No say whatsoever in where he has ended up. And emotionally, I believe he was in a place that we would say, I believe Satan would target as ripe for temptation. He is suffering simply because of the jealousy and sins of his brothers. Now again, the Bible doesn't record anything negative about Joseph. We know he wasn't perfect because he was a human. Maybe, I don't know how he presented the dreams he had to his brothers. Imagine 11 older brothers wouldn't be happy to hear their little brother saying, I'm going to be more important than you are, but I'm not sure how all that went, but he knows I'm here because they hurt me. I'm here because they betrayed me. And they didn't just betray Joseph in this, they betrayed their father as well. And Joseph knows I'm here because the family that should have helped me and the family I would hope would have loved me has lied against me, betrayed me, stabbed me in the back, and lied to our father. And in that state of emotional, you say, just anguish and wreckage, how often do people try and make excuses for sin? When you're suffering, especially when you're suffering only because you think you've done what's right and other people have done that which is wrong, that's when Satan and your flesh want to work together and say, well, see what doing right has got you. See what not giving into temptation has done. See, everybody else is doing bad anyway, and you're the one who's suffering for it time and time again. Why don't you just give in a little bit? And there's that emotional draw of, you know what, I just feel like it's not worth it anymore. But Joseph didn't. We'd say again, physically he was in a place, so emotionally and physically he's in a place to be tempted. You know, Egypt is never a good place to be. It's never a place known for godliness. And even though they stayed for several hundred years after, most of you know what happens a little while after that, but it's not a godly place. You know, when you look at the archaeology of Israel, or Egypt, or you study Egyptology and all that, you know, I don't see a lot of, and they worship Yahweh, the God of the Jews. They've got all these other made-up little weird mutant gods that they worship for everything else, but they weren't godly people. They weren't serving the Lord. They certainly weren't moral people. And in this place, Joseph stands out like a sore thumb if he wants to do what's right and serve the Lord. Joseph is in a place physically where he's not encouraged to do right. He's very much encouraged to do wrong. And he's forced to be here in Potiphar's house, which just so happens to be a place where Potiphar's wife spends a lot of her time. Daily temptation was a reality that Joseph had to deal with. And you're going to face temptations. That is just the reality of living in a sinful world and living in your flesh. I hope that you have people that encourage you like Joseph did not at this point. I hope that you have a good Christian family. I hope that you have godly friends. Even within Faith Baptist Church, I hope there's some other church members that are good, godly friends in your life. People that help keep you accountable. You know, as a pastor, it encourages me when I hear members talking about Bible studies they're doing with other church members. Members who say, yeah, I'm reading through this passage, and brother or sister so-and-so, they're reading through that passage, and we talk about it. It encourages me when I hear fathers and mothers talk about, well, we did our family devotions this week, and we were talking about this, or talking about that. That's good, and that's something that we should have. It's something Joseph didn't have, but it's something that you can have, and I hope you have. I hope you're encouraged by one another, and we should have Christian friends, and Lord willing, even Christian family, that does a lot more to mitigate temptations in your life than create them. I hope that the people you spend time around are encouraging you to be more like Christ and doing their best to keep temptations to sin away from you rather than throwing them before you. But you know, your life is not only lived among a Christian family and church services. It's not, I think it's a fair estimate, unless somebody's been hiding at the church, but I think it's a fair estimate to say I spend more time at church than any other member here at Faith Baptist Church. Unless we have a summer intern and they're living here. But you know, normally I would say I spend more time here than anybody else, but I still spend a lot of time in the world. I still spend a lot of time around sinners and people, and I'm not saying I'm going to bars or wicked places. I have to go to the grocery store. I have to get things done. I have to go outside of my house in the church. There are things that we just have to do. And you're going to be around a lot of ungodliness, even if you have a good church, good Christian friends, and a good Christian family. Temptation is still a daily aspect of your life. Outside, our world is filled with temptations, and within us is the desire to give in to temptation. All around us in this world, there is nearly unbridled access to evil and plenty of temptation to take advantage of it. Now I'm going to pose a couple outlandish scenarios or questions to you, and I hope it is outlandish to you. So, as a Christian, do you think it would be wise to keep explicitly sensual material in your living room, but just tell your family, no, just don't look at it? We got it. That's the sin box. Don't look at it. Don't touch it. We've got it, and we're going to leave it in the living room. We're going to put it under the TV in this box, and we're going to tape the lid shut. It's here, but don't touch it. And would that be a wise situation? Would it be helpful or beneficial for you to have a bunch of carnal, ungodly, sensual music that promotes all manner of wickedness and fornication and is filled with blasphemy and profanity? And you think, okay, we've got it, but we're not going to listen to it. We have it. We have the ability to listen to it. We have the ability to play it. Maybe it's CDs or MP3s or it's on your computer. We say we've got all of this collection of just vile, carnal stuff that the world calls music, and it's not good for you, so just ignore it, but we're going to keep it right here in the home. So we've got those two boxes, or files, you could say. And what about another one? Say we've got all this humanistic, devilish teaching material that's vehemently against the Lord. It's a socialism, Marxism, all these horrible ideologies that have plagued our world and are very much anti-God, against the Lord. We've got Muslim teaching here, Mormon teaching here, and all manner of heresy. Is that we've got it all, but we're going to leave it alone. It's wicked, it's horrible, it's bad, but you kids better not touch that. I think you would agree that'd be pretty dumb to say we're going to do all of that. And I understand our world is wicked, our world is filled with sin. But do you know, even though we would say, Pastor, that would be foolish, Pastor, that would be stupid, Pastor, there's no way we would ever allow that in our home. You know, every device you have that's connected to the internet can access far more than those few things I just described.
That's right.
Everything. Every adult here, I believe, has a phone or you have internet at your home. We have unbridled access to more wickedness than people have been able to see really in all of human history. We have it all there, and I don't think that news is a surprise to anybody here today. I don't think we think about it like that all the time. And I'm not saying you got to scream every time you see a smartphone and throw it down or anything, but the fact of the matter is, we have more access to temptation than people ever have. And we might say, well, I set up a blocker. Well, if you set it up, you can also get around it. And I'm not saying don't use it. I think accountability apps and things like that are beneficial and helpful and can be used. But the fact of the matter is, you have access every single day, whether it's through the internet or just through living in this sinful world, where you're going to be tempted. If you want to do wrong, that option is always there. It's always available for you to make the wrong decision, for you to find and fall to temptation. And in Joseph's account here, he wasn't just around temptation, he faced a very direct and personal attack. It says she cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." This temptation was personal to him. It wasn't a temptation for maybe another slave or another servant in the house. It was very specifically to him. And it's not like Joseph was near some house of lewdness or near something and was trying to peek in. He had a woman coming to him and propositioning him and saying, "Joseph, I want you, and this is your temptation. This is specifically for you right now." And she threw it in his face. She was coming for Joseph, and she was committed to continue to tempt him. Now, Joseph was flesh like any other man. We know later on he did marry and have children. And really, whether or not he was attracted to Potiphar's wife, I don't think is the crux of this sermon or this title. I've heard a lot of guys talk about that, well, Potiphar was rich and Potiphar was wealthy. Surely he had to have a good-looking wife. I don't know. I was talking to Hannah about this. I mean, Mrs. Potiphar could have been 40 years older than Joseph. We don't really know how all that worked out. I mean, again, everybody always, we picture this glamorous Egyptian beauty. She could have had teeth falling out and it's under the old hat. I mean, we don't really know what she looked like. But the point is, she's coming after Joseph. And even if you take away the sensual draw and temptation, think about what the carnal mind would think, well, what could this do for my position? Could my life become a whole lot more comfortable if I start doing what Mrs. Potiphar wants? Could my life get a lot better? Could I get a lot richer? I mean, there's all these other ways that this could be a temptation. But the point is, she's targeting Joseph and saying, hey, this is what I want. And I want you to do it. I want this relationship. I want this sinful act to be done. This temptation was tailor-made for Joseph. It targeted Joseph on a daily basis, but praise the Lord, because of his faith, it did not trap him. It did not get him. And we all face our own unique temptations. And there may be things that are tempting to you and not to me, or tempting to me and not to you. You know, smoking is a temptation I've never really struggled with. I don't know who did it. Someone put in the church address, and it was somebody else's name. It's not a church member. But a couple weeks ago, I got this magazine that's like a cigar and pipe smoker's digest or something. And it's just a bunch of cigars and pipe tobacco, and like it's all these ads and stuff for it. And it came to the church address. I didn't do it. I promised, church. It wasn't me. If you did it, stop it. but somebody put in 1640 Fry Road, Greenwood, Indiana, 46142, and asked for a subscription to this magazine. Well, it came in, I didn't get that. And on the way back, they're sitting down my house like, oh, look at that cigar. Could you just imagine if it was okay for me to smoke? I didn't look and say, oh, look at all the great preachers who had pipes in the past. Would to God I could have. No. It is not my struggle. But I've talked to Christians who have smoked before and quit smoking, and they got saved, they got serious about the Lord. And I still remember this day, one of them, he looked at me one day and said, he goes, hey, John, there's a lot of guys that they say, oh, I used to smoke, and man, I can't stand the smell of cigarettes now. He said, I'll tell you, every single one of them is a bold-faced liar. He said, the sweetest smell on this earth to me is a cigarette being smoked. He goes, he hadn't smoked in years at that point, so am I going to smoke? He goes, I'll tell you, the sweetest thing I smell is tobacco smoke. You know, there's some people, that's a legitimate struggle. And there's a spiritual draw there, there's physiology, there's mental things that are wired in your brain to get used to that addiction. That's a struggle. Other people, maybe abstaining from alcohol really is something they have to fight. Another believer may never consider drinking at all. Some may struggle with sensual thoughts. Others might struggle with anger. Some are fearful or they worry a lot. Some are bitter. Others might just be habitual liars. Well, the Christian who sits next to him in church may not have any of the same temptations that they do. But you know, every one of us is still targeted by temptations. The faces change. The draws are different. The hook is different for every person. But every single one of us is targeted by temptation on a daily basis. When Joseph was targeted, he resisted. And he was able to do so because he kept his eyes on the truth. He recognized, one, how good Potiphar had been to him. How he had promoted him and blessed him and given him in charge of everything over the house except for his wife. And when she first comes, I don't think this is just Joseph rehearsing what he's done. I think it's Joseph reminding her, hey, you have a husband. You're married. You have someone that has married you, someone that's trying to take care of you. And he says, look, because of what Potiphar has done, it is not right. Joseph also knew that it would be wrong. It would be a sin against Potiphar. He says, Potiphar's been good to me, and I will not transgress that. I will not hurt him. But most importantly, and the reason I believe Joseph could stay true in his denial of this temptation, is that he knew the truth, it was a sin against God. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? That's the answer he gave her. A great way to avoid temptation or escape temptation is to remember the truth. Remember the truth of your situation and your circumstance, because how temptation works is it warps your perception. It gets you to think about things as you feel rather than as they really are. And again, Joseph had a lot going on emotionally. He was betrayed, he was abandoned, he was now a slave. He had been the son of probably the richest, if not one of the richest men in the whole area where they lived. He went from being a prince to a slave. He had a lot going on emotionally, a lot of struggle, a lot of pain, but he didn't try and justify it. He still looked at things black and white. This is what's right. This is what is wrong. This is the truth. And the truth is, no matter how I might feel, this would be wrong to do. And he tells that to Mrs. Potiphar. I'm not going to do it. You're married. Your husband's my boss. Your husband's good to me. And there is no way I'm going to sin against my God. And another great way we fight temptation is not just the honesty and looking at the truth, but honestly considering, well, what would the consequences be of giving in to this temptation? The problem with temptation is you're focused on right now in this sin. I have never yet been tempted in my life where I was also tempted to think about the consequences. I know maybe you're more spiritual than me and that's how it works for you. But I have never yet been tempted to think, oh, don't you want to give in? Don't you want to do that now? And think about how much this is going to hurt later. No, temptation is very, very narrowed in its field of view. It wants to get all of your focus on the here and now and make you forget about tomorrow. How do you think so many people become drug addicts and drunkards? They're focused on right now, not the life of ruin and destruction and pain. Whenever you're faced with temptation, you need to focus on the truth and force yourself to count the cost of sin. Recognize not only is choosing sin, choosing to sin against God, but choosing sin is choosing the consequences of that sin. There's so many times you've had to talk with people or maybe in like a counseling or a general conversation about sin with Christians. They say, oh, it's just horrible, and they want to talk about all their life. Like, I don't try to be cruel in this. But when your pain and your suffering is the consequences of sin that you chose, you need to at least understand the truth. You chose those consequences. You chose them. You can't say, oh, my life is horrible all because I was drunk. Well, did you choose to drink? Yes. Did you choose that fornication? Yes. Did you choose to disobey your parents? Did you choose to disobey God? Did you choose to flee from God? Yes, yes, yes. Well, then you chose those consequences.
That's right.
You know what? That's the fine print on the price tag of sin. We don't like to look at everything else. Sometimes when you do like this, we're getting into Thanksgiving, which means everybody's going to start spending a lot of money on Christmas, and everybody's got all these sales. I think probably about half of the emails that I get, I delete immediately, and they're all just ads. Here's a sale, here's a sale, here's a sale, here's a sale. I go a lot for different gun companies and things, in our area, or maybe a place I bought components or stuff from. And it's exciting because what does the heading say? Brand new shotgun or brand new AR-15 for $250. Wow. You click on it, it's like, but then you have to pay an FFL, and you have to pay this fee, and you got to do this, and by the way, there's a waiting period, and you're going to get fingerprinted, and there's and there's all this other stuff, and other expenses, and everything else that's thrown in, and then the great blessing at the end, oh, and here's the tax. There's all this other stuff. Well, that's how sin works. Big flashy sign. Here's the sale. Here's the deal. Here's the enjoyment. Here's what you want. And if we're too foolish to actually look at things as they are in truth, we miss all the other stuff that comes with it. We miss all the other debt, all the other problem, all the other damage, all the other cost of that sin. Oftentimes I think we can justify because we just see that sticker price and think, I can take that, I can afford that. 1 John 1:9, God will forgive me, I'll get right with him later, but I can take that one little time. I can take that one little moment of sin and you don't see what it's going to do to your life and your family afterwards. You know, our enemy, Satan, he's referred to in Matthew 4 verse 3 as the tempter. When Jesus was fasting and Satan came to him, he has that title, the tempter. And as the tempter, Satan knows what he's doing. He's got a lot more practice at tempting people than you do at resisting it. And he's been doing it for a long, long time. And he will use anything he can to help tempt you. Your environment, your relationships, your circumstances, even your own flesh, because he knows how badly it wants to sin. And there are going to be times where your situation, your spirit, your attitude, and everything just seems to be stacked against you, and you'll be tempted to think, there's no possible way I can't just do it. There's no possible way I can't fold to this temptation. But remember, 1 Corinthians 10:13, this is probably one of the most common verses in the Bible for temptation, with good reason. It says, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. That is one of the verses that, at least personally for me, is the most comforting and most convicting at the same time. On the comforting side, means I am never going to be tempted so strongly that I have to say yes. On the convicting side, it means every time I've said yes, I didn't have to. Every time I did follow the temptation, every time I did decide I'm going to sin, I'm going to do it, I'm going to give in, I'm going to feed my flesh, every time I made that decision is because I ran past the exit that God gave me. Every single time. That's comforting, but it's very, very convicting. Joseph here had the chance to sin, but he said, no, God's making me an escape. I'm going to take it. Our second point is this, the resilience of temptation. We saw the reality, now we're to the resilience of temptation. Verse 10 says, she spake to Joseph day by day. And I believe that speaking was calling him again to sin. It wasn't just, hey, Joseph, how are you doing? She was calling him every single day to this sin. He was forced into that position. Again, he was a slave. He had no desire to be there. It was not his plan to be there. It was right that he said no the first time, but that didn't make it go. Or go away. That sin persisted. Even later, obviously, that sin was changing tactics. That temptation kept coming after Joseph every day. Day by day, Potiphar's wife called, and day by day, he resisted. Imagine for Joseph, is thinking about this every single day. He was just trying to do his job. And he did everything he could, but she was still there, and she would come after him. And again, I imagine that Joseph is trying to change up his routine, change up his schedule, but every time he comes to me, now I'm coming into the kitchen, and there she is. All right, well, let's go work somewhere else. Now I'm coming into the barn, and there she is. And no, let me go somewhere. And she's just hounding him and trying to tempt him. And most temptations that you are going to face in this life, they are not going to be a one-and-done situation. I wish it worked that way. She'd say, here's a sin. Oh, don't you want to do this? Say, no, I will not. I'm going to serve the Lord, and you never struggle again. That'd be great. That's not how the world works. That's right. It's not how it works at all. It keeps coming and coming and coming. And maybe you face a temptation at work or at home. It's like Joseph, it's something that you really can't entirely avoid. As I said earlier, with the accessibility we have to the evil on our internet and many other avenues of wickedness, there's always temptation somewhere nearby. But like Joseph, you can still commit to deny temptation. Do your best to deny it every day. And daily temptations will come, and daily you must stand your ground against them. And a great thing that we can do to help us is you can do your best to avoid unnecessary temptations. Don't unnecessarily place temptations in your path. Like I said, I think Joseph might have rearranged his schedule. Joseph could have been trying other things, but it was in that sense undeniable that he had to do his job. He had to serve Potiphar. He had to take care of his house. And that meant there were times that he was going to be around Potiphar's wife, but he could do things to try and limit that interaction. Do you know that your phone does not always have to be in your hand or on your person? You know, we see, we don't go out a whole lot, but we're going to try again soon, I promise, dear, to go on another date at some point. You know, when you go to restaurants, it's always, I'm not in that relationship, but it bugs me when you just see people sit around and they just stare at their phone the whole time. I can't be looking at my phone like that in public. It's a situational awareness thing. I'm not saying I'm really tactical, but I just don't like people being around me, behind me and stuff. So I just can't be looking at my phone. So I'm looking around. I'm normally trying to see who's coming in, what's going on, what's around. And I would say maybe even up to 50% or more of people, even when they're walking around, they're not engaged at all. Anybody ever have phantom vibration? Phantom phone vibration? I am ashamed to say I am afflicted as well. But it's just like we're so used to having our phone on us 24/7. It's got to be there. I've got to have it. And there's a lot of things outside of pornography and those kind of evils that are sinful and wrong with our phones and how we can use them. But there's so many times that, we've got to have it there. And there's that temptation to, it's just got to be. And I think every person here that's ever been on a social media or YouTube, whatever, you understand what a doom scroll is. And you've been trapped into that. You know, best case scenario, you're being vain. And you're wasting time. And that's what everything about this world is. It's honed, and it's had thousands of years of Satan trying to work and manipulate stuff to make temptation easier, better, and faster for you. And it's all around us. And you don't have to have your phone on you all the time. I'll tell you, as your pastor, my phone is normally somewhere close enough where if it rings, my wife or I will hear it. But it's not always in my pocket. Sometimes it's not even with me. I go to church and realize when I get here, I left my phone at home. But there's times it's not always there, but it's normally close enough so I can be reached if any of the church needs to get a hold of me. But you don't always have to have it there. You don't have to have a television in your bedroom. I'm going to take it a little far. You don't even really have to have a television at home. That's kind of controversial for some people, but you don't have to have it. We don't have to have a lot of the things that have become regular methods of entertainment or regular practice in our life. You can live just fine without social media, by the way. That's right. Now, I don't know if anyone here struggles with that, and I'm thankful that I don't get a lot of social media. And I will say this, I've said it many times, but it's been a while. If you have tried to friend me on Facebook, thank you. I probably don't know, and I haven't answered, and it's not because I don't like you. Last I checked, I'm in the 80-something pending friend request just because I don't look, and they go back 5 years. So don't feel bad. I'm not being mean. I have a Facebook because our church has a Facebook, and that's how I update and manage stuff. So, and I use it for marketplace to buy motorcycles. But other than that, I'm not a social media guy. But again, for others, that is a major temptation. For others, we got to know what all of my 1,719 friends are doing, even though I've only ever met 5 of them. But I got to know what's going on. I got to know if I had a better dinner than they did. I got to know if my boyfriend's better than theirs, or I got to know if my kid's smarter than their kid. And people get so obsessed that we got to know all this stuff. Yeah. That's an unnecessary temptation. You can turn it off. You can delete your account. There's ways that we could avoid things. When I ask you in your own life, think back and look. Ask the Lord, God, am I leading myself into temptation that you don't want me to have? Am I setting up these spiritual roadblocks in my life? Am I putting temptations before me that really don't need to be there? Sometimes they're unavoidable, but sometimes we put them there. If you're putting temptations in your path, I encourage you to get away from them. If there are temptations that you just have to face, I encourage you to do everything you can to minimize your exposure. I knew a man that was a married man, And he was in a work environment where he was middle management, maybe a little higher. And there was a female co-worker he had that he had known for some time, and she started to make it very apparent that she would be making advances towards him. She knew he was married. He obviously knew he was married. Wanted to love his wife, wanted to be faithful. But this woman started to make advances towards him in love. Now, as a position above her, he could rearrange the office and rearrange his schedule. Somebody couldn't just fire her. He couldn't go to his boss and say, hey, she flirted with me, we got to fire her. But there were steps he could take and that he took trying to avoid that temptation as much as possible. And again, there are things that you are going to be tempted with, things that you can't just make disappear, but you should strategize and do the best you can to minimize that temptation's opportunity to snare you. There are many temptations that are simply one of your mind. Thoughts, bad thoughts. Some temptations may be to an ungodly spirit or attitude. It may be something you've struggled with for decades. You know, as a Christian, God does not want you to be hateful, cruel, or critical. But when you make that your habit, it's very hard to break that cycle. Mom called me out a lot when I was growing up for being critical. And I think we were all naturally that way. We were joking before church, and I told Brother Chris, I have the gift of criticism. I can tell you why you're stupid and show you how to fix it. We have that idea. We all have that nature. We can all be critical. We can all be cruel. We can be hateful. And the longer you are that way, the harder it is not to be. But that's a temptation that you need to overcome. It's a temptation that we can struggle with, but it's something that you can overcome, because what did the Bible say in 1 Corinthians 10? There's a way to escape. You can choose to be nice. You can choose not to say that thought that popped into your head. I think I'm probably not alone in the fact that there have been things I started saying nope. I wish I could say that it happened more than it had, but there are times it's nope, that's not going to come out. I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to do everything I can to avoid giving into that temptation. We need to avoid every temptation we can, and when we can't, we still need to stand strong against it, because oftentimes that temptation might get stronger and stronger. Joseph's temptation here in Potiphar's wife got more and more deliberate, more and more, bold as she tried to get him. She had said, lie with me, and day by day, but eventually got to the point that she laid hands on Joseph. She laid hands on him and tried to force him to do what she wanted. And in that moment, we see our third point, that he had the right response to temptation. The right response to temptation is point 3. And in Joseph's circumstance, he saw no way that this situation was going to end well. I believe he had known for a while this was coming. But when she grabbed hold of him, you could see, again, I'm thinking in his mind, saying, this is a no-win situation for Joseph. Not going to go well. If I stay, then I'm sinning against God, and I'm sinning against the Lord, and I'm betraying Potiphar, who hasn't been good to me. There's no good here. And if I leave, I don't know what this crazy woman's going to do. But he said, you know what? I'll always take the not sinning option. And instead of staying there, and I love how the Bible words it, he got him out. It says he ran. That's the response. As much as you can, just avoid temptation at all costs. And it's trying to force him into sin, and Joseph says, I will run away without my jacket rather than look like to commit this sin. I will run from this sin, even if it means I'm leaving stuff behind. I will get out. I believe that Joseph had made the decision he would not sin long before Mrs. Potiphar put her hands on him that day. He knew what this woman wanted. He knew what she had been trying to convince him to do. He might have even planned, what will I do if she tries to force me? What will I do if she tries to lock me in a room? Or what will I do if she tries to physically grab me? These are things that Joseph had likely even been thinking about. The decision to avoid temptation needs to happen before you're in the moment of temptation. The time where you're going to decide whether or not you'll give in to sin is not when temptation has both arms wrapped around you.
That's good.
And think, does God want me to do this? It's not bad, but is it that bad? That's not the time you want to start having these conversations and having these reasonings. You need to decide before the temptation snares you that, no, God doesn't want me to do that, therefore I will not do that. I will not commit the sin. I will not fall. Because in that moment of temptation, when sin is its arms all wrapped around you and it's whispering those things into your ear and trying to convince you, I tell you, it's very easy for your flesh to say, oh, I think it's okay. I think this time. Isn't that one of the biggest lies of temptation? Well, it's only going to be this time. It's only going to be once. It's only going to be today. I'll be strong tomorrow. I'll resist next time. When sin's got you all wrapped up, that's what it wants you to believe, because it knows you'll fall today, and you'll fall tomorrow, and you'll give in every day after. And as Joseph's there, and again, I'm not sure, I don't know, was he wearing a vest, was he wearing whatever their version of a sports coat would be, or a suit, but he grabs on and she's telling him again, and Joseph, you know what? This temptation has crossed the line. It's not something I can bear anymore. It's not something, I don't mean he was about to give in, because it's not something I can tolerate to be around, and he just took off. I was wondering too, how far did he run? I'm just visualizing. I'm seeing this, I don't know what we would call it in Egypt, this open air villa house thing, and all of a sudden Joseph comes out the second story window and just keeps on running. And just, and he's gone, so I'm not going to do anything with her, I'm not going to be there. And I would have loved to see the look on her face with Joseph, jumped out the door of the window and she's just standing there with his jacket. I have, this is extra biblical, I'm not trying to preach this point, but I have a notion that Mrs. Potiphar was used to getting what she wanted. I mean, she honestly seems like a brat. She was really persistent with Joseph, and I think she probably got her way most of the time. Also, Joseph might not be the first time this proposition has been made, or this situation has played out in her life or marriage to Potiphar. But when Joseph ran away, she realized, this guy's different. Something's different about Joseph, and it was he made a commitment that I'm not going to sin against the Lord. It is far better to run from sin and to look strange to sinners than it is to fall into temptation. I think people that saw Joseph running out of the house probably thought, well, that was weird. That was kind of different. Wasn't expecting that to happen today, but Joseph said, I don't really care what you think, I'm not going to sin. I tell you, if you avoid sin, you abstain from sin, you are going to look really weird to a lot of people in this world, but I would much rather sinners think me strange than God have to judge me for disobeying. I'm excited that we're able to partner with Brother Jared and Miss Laura, and they were here with us a couple of weeks ago, and we did talk about that quite a bit, with his position in the military, and he said, the two things that made him stand out more than anything else was he didn't drink and he didn't curse. People get that. That was weird. They didn't like it, and they recognized that. He said he was thankful he had an officer above him that really helped him with that and didn't pressure him or make it as hard as it could have been in the military with those stances. But he says, people noticed, and they thought I was different. They thought I was strange. But I tell you, isn't it better to be right in the eyes of God and strange in the eyes of ungodly people? And by the way, the world's going to think you're weird for one reason or another. It might as well be because you love Jesus. It might as well be because you're serving the Lord and you're going to be faithful to Him and you're going to stand for Him. When Jesus was showing what it takes to get rid of temptation, to cast it off, I won't read it for sake of time, but you can read Matthew 18, and He's saying there in verses 8 through 9, this discussion is, hey, if your hand's going to cause problems, get rid of it. If your eye's going to cause problems, get rid of it. It's saying you need to be willing to make some drastic changes to avoid sin and temptation. Ask you, how seriously do you take temptation in your own life? God takes it very seriously. He takes your response to it very seriously, your preparation to it very seriously. So I ask you, how serious do you take it? So that temptation, it's going to keep coming. It's going to be persistent. It's going to get stronger and stronger. And if you're not truly dedicated to staying faithful to the Lord, truly dedicated to standing against it, eventually you're going to fall. So I pray that every one of us here would have that right response to resist and even run away if that's what it takes. If you do, we can see our final point this morning. It's quite brief. The reward of resisting temptation. Now you might be sitting here this morning and say, well, Pastor, I know the story of Joseph. I know what happens next. And you're saying there's a reward, but Joseph went from being the top guy in a high official's home to being in the dungeon of Egypt. Now most people would not consider that a reward, or a promotion at least. We live in a sinful world, and People aren't going to like it when you stand for the Lord at all. But you know, if you follow the course of Joseph's life, he's not too far off from a very steep incline, from things getting a whole lot better. And there are going to be times where you might resist temptation, and rather than getting that great promotion or that great lift that we know Joseph got later, things might get a little bit worse. You know, there are people who have been fired because they decided to stand for integrity and truth. Yes. Okay. There's even been people in churches that were excommunicated or kicked out because they said, I'm going to stand for the truth and I'm not going to give in to heresy. I pray that would never ever be the case here at Faith Baptist Church, but there's a lot of churches that shouldn't be or that used to be called Baptist that have pushed out a few or one faithful member. Because they said, no, that's not right. I'm not going to give in to the temptation to just go with everybody else. I'm going to stand for the truth. And they went from being in the church to being alone, trying to find somewhere new. There's people who've done that in families. They said, hey, you know what? This has been a sin. This has been a struggle. I'm not going to deal with that. If you think, oh, that doesn't really happen, you talk to some diehard Catholic kids who got saved. Think of all the Christians who have left cults like Mormonism and Jehovah's Witness and Islam and all these other horrible things to trust Christ. There's many situations where you resisting temptation, you doing what's right, may, in the world's eyes, make your life a little bit worse for a while. But eventually it's going to be made right. As Brother Brad sang in that song, God knows what's going on, He's going to take care of it. As you see in the life of Joseph, he ended up being the second in command, right hand there to Pharaoh. We don't know that ever would have happened if he would have said the 12th time Mrs. Potiphar came to him, oh, you know what, maybe it's all right if I just do it. And I'm not the Lord, and you could drive yourself crazy with what ifs, but I'm not sure that Joseph would have been the Joseph we know if that would have happened. I don't know that he ever would have been there in the prison. And you might even think, again, there's a lot of God's hand in this. If a slave had actually tried to force himself upon Potiphar's wife, I believe in Egyptian time he would have been executed. Maybe this is Potiphar's compassion for Joseph, or Potiphar knowing a little bit of what kind of horrible woman his wife was. But he ends up in jail instead, and most of you, if you've been to church a while, you understand, well, who did he meet in jail? He met the butler. He met the baker too, but things don't pan out there. But he met the butler. Pan out. Sorry. But he meets the butler. And who does the butler get to talk to later on? He gets to talk to Pharaoh. And because the butler knew Joseph, because the butler had seen what Joseph could do with the help of God, and because the butler mentioned him to Pharaoh, who had a bad dream, Joseph ends up saving, not just reuniting with his family and his father, but saving their lives and fulfilling the covenant God had made all the way back to Abraham. That all came because of Joseph. It all came because Joseph said in that moment, I will not sin against God. I tell you, Christian, we have no idea the ramifications that our actions can bring. We have no idea, and I think a lot of us will be dead and gone before you might realize the impact some decisions you make in your life are going to have. There might be people in your family that have yet to be born that are going to be encouraged and helped because of a decision you make this week. So your decision to resist temptation is needful. It is needful for you. It is needful for those that come after. And I pray that we would be Christians that, like Joseph in this chapter, would say, you know what? I refuse. I don't care what the temptation is. I don't care what the deal is. I don't care what is offered. I will not sin against my God. If we could have all heads bowed and eyes closed this morning, we're going to begin our invitation. If you're able, I would ask you to please stand with your eyes closed and your head bowed and an attitude of prayer.